Right, in this video, what we're going to look at is basically setting up a different type of control scheme for our object player that we have. I'm going to show you how to do a Zelda type dungeon crawler where you can move up, down, left, right, and it's really, really, really simple, nice and quick, nice and easy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this player object. So if you've not watched my player object video, I would suggest you go watch that. But I'm basically going to make a new one called obj underscore player player Zelda, we'll call it, just to make it easy so we know that that's our Zelda player. And we're going to double click on it to open it. Now the sprite we're going to use, so I had a sprite from before that I used called enemy, but I will use that sprite for now just so we can see it. So it's there, so it's different sprite, we know it's different. And we can more or less use the same code as before. We don't need to change that much. So the things we need to change is obviously they're not going to be jumping and they're not going to have gravity, so we can get rid of these two. However, they are also going to have speed, because obviously they're going to be traveling at a certain speed, and obviously in a certain direction, so X and Y. So we can leave those two in, that's absolutely fine. So what do we need to change on here? Well, we need to add some more things and also take some things away. So we don't need on the ground, we can get rid of that. Because obviously we're not checking if they're jumping. And we also need to, or we can get rid of jump as well, because we're not jumping either. We don't need to worry about gravity, and we also don't need to worry about jumping either, so we can get rid of those too. Now, what we can do is keep the collisions, so they will check, the collisions will be the exact same, it's no different, so if you do want collisions in your games, keep that, it's not a problem. X direction's the same, so left and right, not a problem. However, we do need to check up and down, and we also need to be able to move up and down, so let's do var up equals keyboard underscore check vk underscore up, which VR up, not that's VK, not VR. I can actually get the right one. Right, there we go. So VK, by the way, is virtual keyboard, so basically just means your keyboard. Because you might not be using an actual keyboard. It depends on what the computer's using, so that's why it says virtual keyboard. Because you could be using an actual on-screen keyboard potentially, and it will still work. So we'll have up and down. So now we've got up and down we can use. I'm going to have another var called Y direction this time. Now you would think it would be up minus down, but no. So the way that this works is up in the Y direction is minus and going down is positive. So to do it the correct way, we need to do down minus up. So now this is the right way around. So if we press down, it'll be 1, which means we're going downwards. If we press up, it'll be minus 1, which means we'll be going up. So it's the same code as what we did before for left and right. So it's the exact same thing. And luckily here we can just put in Y speed equals Y direction times speed. And that's it. Like, it will work. So one thing we do need to do. So in room 1, we've still got our old player. So I'm going to delete him. And I'm going to go back into my assets. And I'm going to drag my new player that I've just created in. And we'll see if he works. So let's press play. So mine's launched. Now let's see if we can move left and right. Yeah, still can move left and right. Up and down. Yep, move left, right, up and down. And we can also move diagonally, look, because we've set it up. So if you hold two keys at once, it'll just set the X and Y directions. You can also move diagonal, which is pretty cool. So, and if you notice, we can actually bump into the collision that was still there from previous. So the collision still works. There's no problem with this collision. We can just use the exact same. So in terms of colliding with things, not a problem either. Now, one thing you will notice when we go left and right, he doesn't change round, and there's a good reason for this. So, when you move to the left, we need to make sure that we change the direction to looking to the left. So, to do this, we need to check if we're looking left. So, if we're looking left, then we're going to change it so we are looking left. Now, the good thing is you don't need to change the sprite for this. So, if you're going up and down, you probably would have a sprite that's different looking up and down, but we've got left. And we've also got a sprite that's looking in a direction, so we can just change to the other direction. So to do this, we can have image underscore x scale, and we can just tell it to be -1. So scaling can be used to stretch it this way, so x scale and y scale. If we make it 2, it'd double in size. If we make it 3, it'd triple in size, etc. -1 will mean it'll be the same size, it'll just flip it the other way, essentially. So that's what we're going to do. So if we were to check this, now let me just check something on my enemy. So by default, you will have your little cursor, so the little sort of origin point here. Now, this will cause a bit of an issue, but I'm going to show you what it causes. So if I press play now and put left, it'll actually go left now, but I can't go back the other way, which is a bit of an issue. Now, the reason why I can't go back the other way is because I've not put it in. So I've intentionally left this out on purpose because it's to show you how it works. So let's do right. So to put it back the same way, now for some people, and I got confused at this the first time I ever did this, you would think because it's already at a scale this way, you would tell it to -1 again to flip it back. But no, you just tell it to be 1. So -1 just means it'll constantly just flip it. It doesn't mean that it's changed the actual value of where the X scale should have been. So by setting it back to 1, it just says, right, I need to revert back to where it was originally. So now, if I press left, it'll go left, and it'll face left. If I press right, it'll face right. So let's have a look. Oops, let's drag it on screen. Here we go. So left, right, yeah, it's just swapping. But if you notice, there's a bit of a weird jump. Now, the reason why there's a bit of a weird jump is because, and I just changed this back just to show you, is that this origin point here is on the top left, so it's actually flipping around this point. So down where my mouse is going, it will flip on that axis, which is no good because that's quite a big jump. So what we are going to do, we can use this at the top. We're going to set it to middle center, so it's right in the middle. So if we need to flip it this way, it'll just flip it around that center now, so there'll be no problems. So let's press play again. And if we notice now, so if we go left, right, there's no jumping as such anymore. There is a tiny bit, but that's because we're telling it to move as we press the button. But it's not a problem. So now I can move around. We can change this character left to right. We've got collision, and yeah, it just works essentially. Now you would have things for up and down as well, but we haven't got a sprite for that, so we can't do that yet. But that essentially is how to make a Zelda-type dungeon crawler with those controls anyway. What we will also look at some point is how to put in sprite squint up and down, but it's pretty much the same code. In order to show you what that would be, just really quickly, just before we end this video, is you would say, well, when you press, say, up or left or whatever, so let's have another if statement for up. So if you go up, so if the up key is pressed at any point, then we can say, right, sprite underscore index. So sprite index is what sprite do you want to use currently? Just 1 equals, by the way. So we could say, for example, we want it to change to a different sprite entirely. So let's try SBR player. Now, the problem is with this, the SBR player is much bigger than the enemy. So, well, what we've called the enemy sprite. So the enemy sprite is 24 by 24 pixels. The player sprite is 64 by 64, so it's much larger. But you will see what happens when I press up now. So, let me just put this on screen because I keep forgetting it moves. So now, if I press up, you'll see that it changes into that sprite. And it won't change back because I've not told it to. And yes, it will have the collision of the actual sprite that it's in, so quite a big collision box, which is not ideal because obviously we don't want it to do that. So we can obviously fix this because we would have a proper sprite that would be set up, but you wouldn't ever use that. But that's how you actually change the sprite. So if you want to change the sprite, you just use this sprite index equals then whatever sprite you want, and it'll change it, and then you can change it back. So that's how you make a basic dungeon crawler sort of setup for your player if you're wanting to have that sort of control scheme.